Lockwood Co, Mada, and Shin-chan, me and the Professor on summer vacation. This is Staying In.
Now, I never want anyone to say that this podcast does not deliver on its promises.
Okay.
Okay?
Were people saying that?
I say it.
And that is all that matters.
So therefore, we begin with, please tell us about axe throwing, Pete.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I listened to the last episode and I did think to myself, I feel like maybe this is just showing a little bit of my personality, but I felt like I came across as some sort of woodland hero.
But you do have a bit of a penchant for the how best shall I describe these particular pursuits? You do have a penchant for outdoor gruff pursuits. I remember once we came round to yours and you'd planned a whole day out for us all.
Yeah.
And it involved buggy driving.
Yeah.
Or quad bikes.
Yeah.
Archery.
Yeah.
And paintball.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you've done axe throwing.
And now I've done axe throwing. Yeah. Well, what can I say? When people think Peter Willington, they think rugged.
They would think of that film, Robert Eggers' The Northman.
Probably. They certainly wouldn't think soft cheese or I don't know, the phrase bougie or something like that. They wouldn't think those things, would they? They would think, oh, there's a man. There's a man who can make a bivouac.
But couldn't spell it.
Oh, absolutely. So I did axe throwing, which somebody was telling me, it might have been one of you lot, was telling me that it's become the new escape room.
I think it's become the new ping pong table, probably.
Tough to get a rally.
Yeah. I mean, so what I mean by that is all around major metropolitan areas of the UK, there seem to be things that happen in like waves, and one of them was escape rooms. It was like, to begin with, people were like, oh, have you done an escape room yet? Oh no, I've never done one of them. Oh, that's so exciting. Oh, there's one that's just owned by me. How exciting. But now it seems to be axe throwing, right? So now that's the event, the thing that people do, on work evenings, apparently, or the big one is stag do's, obviously, is going axe throwing. And what this is, well, I mean, do I have to describe it? It's throwing axes, basically.
I feel like you need to, there needs to be some sort of qualifier, because otherwise it sounds very hedonistic.
Bonkers, doesn't it?
So obviously you're throwing an axe.
Sure.
So what I want to know is two things.
Yeah. What's
the onboarding? What's the tutorializing and the training that goes into that? And then is the actual activity, is it just, can you do it, or is there a framework to the activity itself?
Yeah, so there is a framework to the activity, and that is because of the health and safety onboarding that they do. So essentially what happens is you turn up on the day and they say, right, first of all, can you scan in and accept these terms and conditions?
Like a proper Viking.
So you get your QR code scanner out, and you scan it, and they say, oh, just make sure you scan in, like people did around COVID, all that sort of stuff. You scan in, and then it says, oh, just hit the accept button, and you go, hold on a second, and you read it. It's like no liability, dangerous, death,
injury,
injury,
loss of limbs.
Blah, 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 blah. This was anyway, accept, right? So then they go, all right, come on in. And because that's all very serious, and then there's a bit where they get you all hyped up and stuff. They're like, "Who's ready for axe throwing?" Yeah, and obviously because you're British, you feel a bit awkward, and everybody goes, yes, oh, let's do this. And then they
except one person who's frighteningly up for it,
basically like a berserker.
Yeah,
they got the war paint. They're completely bare chested. Bring me to the gates of Valhalla.
From my experience, those people are not very good at it. I will say that. From my experience,
you did it once.
One evening.
Exactly. Yeah. My experience so far has shown me that it's always the quiet ones who are surprisingly good at throwing axes. So anyway, you go in, and they divide you up into teams. And then
you throw axes at each other.
Yeah, and then you've got a target that you have to hit, like in an archery range or a shooting range or something along those lines.
Okay.
It's made of wood, and the idea is it's to throw a throwing axe into the wood, and to get it into as center to the target as possible. And you get a certain number. In this place, you got a certain number of points for hitting the bullseye, and outwards from there. To be fair, it's all done in a sort of like, it feels safer than maybe it should be, kind of a way. But the thing that really gets me with it, with all of these things, is it's so very obviously built for stag do's, right? So so I went on a work thing, and the company I work for is very, very nice, and everybody's very, very nice to one another. It's a really nice place to work. But what that means is, because there isn't that hyper competition and there isn't that like extreme masculinity of a stag do, of a laddie stag do, the way that the event is presented is falls a little bit flat. So how like you might have let's say for example you're performing on a live stage, you're trying to gauge the audience, right, to some degree, like what are they going for here, how are they reacting? You go out on stage each night, and each time you'd figure out what people were laughing to, and you'd kind of lean into what those jokes were. Well, with this one, obviously, because it's built for stag do's, there was a little bit of slightly leery, laddish language, and there was just like us sat there, very sensitive games developers, sort of going like, we don't really, this isn't the kind of language that we often hear or use. So it's like, who's ready to get pumped? And it's like people would put their hands up, just like, I'm ready. It was great.
I wouldn't mind getting pumped.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, a good example, and it was all very good-natured, I will say that. But a good example of this would be, as well as the target, to the top left and to the top right of the target were these little red spots. And if you were able to throw the axe into one of the little red spots outside of the target, you would get bonus points, right? Fine. A fine mechanic. What they referred to, but they had described this target as the nipple.
Oh.
And obviously I'm sure that gets a lot of laughs with half-cut lads, down from Torquay or wherever it is, but with a bunch of very sort of nice, pleasant, slightly shy people, it's
repressed.
It's somewhat sure. It falls somewhat flat, basically, but it's fun, and I hit the board.
We saw.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I was, a natural
savant,
but
those words were used, though, Pete.
Those words were used.
At one point, someone said, "The scrolls are coming true. The prophecy.
He has arrived." So I was all right. I was sort of like middle of the pack, and I did think to myself, the thing I always think to myself with all of these things, and it's a very cruel joke. So I don't know whether or not I should say it, but I'm going to. It's a very cruel joke, but the thing I always do, because I'm a real jerk, is I always find the person that I'm with, as part of the group, whenever I'm in that kind of a situation, I always turn to somebody who's in that group with me, and I sort of say under my breath, like, God, can you imagine having a career like this? This must be amazing. Like, can you imagine being an axe thrower? Like, what that must be. Ooh, like, top of the. Oh, I always wanted to be an axe thrower. Like, I bet you, or like saying like, oh, I bet you must have loads of fun here. I bet you must love your job. Like, it must be really tedious. Or maybe it's brilliant, and there's like loads of people who are like way into axe throwing, and like this is like their dream job. But like, can you imagine having that as a job? That must be weird, right?
Good icebreaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think the application process is like? Do you think it's like hit the nipple?
Perfect. What would you call this small red area?
HR says that we shouldn't call it.
What I love about this is that there's a certain percentage of, especially
Go on.
Britain, who says you're not allowed to do anything anymore, are you? The PC police, you're not allowed to have any fun these days.
No.
All these EU bureaucrats.
Yeah.
Literally now, you're able to go into a building and throw axes at each other.
While drunk, to be clear, while
drunk,
and also having eaten a very greasy pizza, so the axe handle isn't even particularly safe in one's hands. Like
it's and like we were allowed to climb up 30-foot trees unaccompanied, unsupervised,
with
untethered.
The barest of safety training. Like the barest minimum.
Like, I still remember when we did Go Ape, there was one brief second where I was just like, I'm not tethered to anything right now.
Is health and safety gone mad? It's like, no, it's not.
No.
It's not at all. In fact, I would argue maybe health and safety has not gone mad enough if you're giving me 3 pints, some pizza and an axe and going, off you pop, hit the nipple.
Job done.
If I'm coughing, by the way, it's because I've been ill.
All right, okay. Well, that was the other subject we have to cover.
We have to cover. I was ill. And I'm sort of. I wish we were a podcast that did sound effects, because then you could do like an auditorium, like kind of thing. Yeah, I've been ill. I got COVID for the second time.
Oh, the sequel.
One more, we get to keep the match ball.
And let me tell you, much like most video games, the sequel was a lot better than the original, but I still wouldn't recommend it. It's not great. It is still not a lot of fun at all to have it. And that wiped me out for a week. That was which was just after the axe throwing, to be perfectly honest with you. So, but what it did let me do is I actually got to play some video games. You know how I was kind of at the start of this year, I was talking about like I haven't played anything. Like 2022, I played barely anything. Right, like I got so few hours. I managed to actually sit down and play some video games, which was really nice. In fact, I played and completed a video game over 2 days.
Oh my God.
While I was poorly.
That's good.
While I was poorly.
That's really good, because sometimes I always find the opposite happens. Like sometimes I think, it'd be great if I could get a little illness and I could just lie down for a week and just play a game. But usually I'm too ill to like look at a screen or...
I'm the same. So I am actually the same, but something in my brain went... You got hankering for like relaxing game, right? So like Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, that kind of laid back, no pressure. That's what you're after. Because I too don't often play games when I'm ill. Do you folks do you have like a thing that you do when you're ill that gives you comfort? That's like a piece of media. Like, do you like read comics or? Like the Beano, or do you, I don't know, like play roll and writes or a certain genre of film?
I tend to watch like the American Office.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's a good.
It's just perfectly.
Comfort.
I can dip in and out. Yeah. I can sleep. I can wake up. And I've seen it so many times. It's just more like chicken soup for the eyes than it is.
Chicken soup for the eyes. That's beautiful. I don't have anything, which either means that I don't get ill that often, or I am constantly ill.
Or when you're ill, you just sit there and recharge slowly and quiet, just lying perfectly still.
There's not like a thing I sit down and elect to do. I have that when I'm ironing, but not when I'm ill.
Right, okay.
You iron?
Yeah, I iron.
Oh, yeah, you got to do ironing, Sam.
Who irons these days?
Weddings, funerals, and interviews. Ironing.
I think my greatest achievement in my marriage so far is convincing my wife that we don't need to iron our bed sheets.
Oh, yeah. No, that's good.
I don't iron those. I don't want to get into bed and it feels like I'm getting into an envelope.
Was she previously ironing bed sheets?
Yes, absolutely.
Really? Okay.
She'd iron curtains if she really.
Well, all right. Let's take this conversation off air, because there's a serious problem going on there. If you're ironing bed sheets, that's too much. It's too much. So I like to have things that are like comforting and wholesome, and the chicken soup for the soul, I would argue, would probably be the kind of chicken soup I would have. Have to be vegan chicken soup.
Yeah.
But Yeah. So I gravitate towards stuff that's slice of life. So I watched My Neighbors, the Yamadas, which is a Ghibli movie. One of my probably my most watched movie, like probably my favorite movie.
Really?
Oh, I need to watch that then.
Top three, certainly one of the 2 or 3 that I would say is one of my favorite.
I kind of sort of felt a bit pushed back by that movie. Like I really like enjoyed it, but I think like its fragmented nature didn't really grab me in the end of the day. I wonder whether that is the thing that probably appealed to you most in terms of
as somebody who doesn't like movies, it's great because I can just pause it and go, that's enough. But that slice of life, wholesome thing, that really appeals to me. And I've had a game on my sort of wanted list, and been looking at it and seeing it and keeping sort of an eye on it for a while.
Not even a wish list.
No, just to like
a wanted.
Basically, a wish list is like I might. I'll put it on there to consider it, but a wanted list is I'm going to buy this at some point, like without a doubt. Okay. And that is Shin-chan, Me and the Professor on Summer Vacation: The Endless 7-Day Journey by Millennium Kitchen and Neos, which I will now, from here on out, just call Shin-chan. Confusingly, there is a TV series on which it's based on a manga called Shin-chan. And this is basically a video game. It's an IP-based game based on Shin-chan or Crayon Shin-chan. And if you're of a certain age, about our age, if your back aches when you get up in the morning, you'll probably be the right age for this. Where they put this on, I think it was Toonami back in the day, and it's basically a naughty, I think he's like 8 years old or something like that, naughty boy in Japan, and it kind of follows him around, and the humor is, a lot of it is based on a character that shouldn't be saying the things that he is saying.
Probably a bit reductionist to say, but it's a little bit Bart Simpson-esque.
Yeah,
in a way.
Yeah, I would say it's slightly more extreme than Bart Simpson, but it is that reaction of like it with the moral majority or minority or whatever it is nowadays. It would have that effect of like, oh, I can't believe that they said that, whereas other people would just find it really funny. So anyway, so it's based on that, but it's also, and this is the kicker, right? And I'm glad Dan's not here because his eyes would leave his skull from rolling out. It is based on a Japan-only PS2 and PSP series of slice-of-life simulator games that never came out in England.
Is this stuff like Boku and Natsuyasumi?
Sam, ding, ding, ding. I wish we did have special effects because it's actually a spiritual successor to Boku no Natsuyami.
Wow, Sam, that's really clever.
Thanks.
So the company that made, and Boku no Natsuyasumi, My Summer Vacation.
I think we've pronounced it 3 different ways, 3 different times, but yeah.
We're covered then, aren't we?
Yeah, it's called My Summer Vacation. It translates as My Summer Vacation.
So Pete, can you tell me, so as an ignoramus here, I kind of get an impression of what it is just by the title, but can you explain to me what a slice of life game is?
So slice of life is kind of it comes from manga and anime, and the idea is that it's about the humor that comes from everyday life is generally tends to be slice of life. That's not quite exact, but that generally is what I like about it. And there are other ones. There's ones that kind of blend more like romance. There's ones that blend more like seinen, which is a bit more like boys actiony stuff. But generally, slice of life is that like the humor that comes from everyday life examples. So My Summer Vacation was a series that I really wanted to play for a really long time. It was made by a company called Millennium Kitchen, and I actually did import a copy for my PS2 to try and get it running on an emulator to see if I could play any of it. And no, it's like you really need to understand the text. So I was really gutted because there was like 3 games that I thought, this would be perfect for me. And they just never came out in the West, and I was really, really upset about that. Well, it turns out that Millennium Kitchen are back, and they basically got access to the IP for Shin-chan, and they were like, well, let's do a spiritual successor to My Summer Vacation, but let's use the Shin-chan IP to make it a wider thing. Let's translate it into different languages, including English, and let's have it published by a company called Neos, who I'd not really heard of before. But they seem to be quite a big deal. They're one of these companies that I think has a lot of different stakes and a lot of different pies.
Stakes in a lot of different pies.
I'm still recovering, Sam, from this COVID. My brain is still a fuzz. A lot of different fingers and a lot of different pies. How's that feel? Is that better? That's better, isn't it?
Stakes in different pies sounds better, but
you're right.
The idiom is fingers in pies.
So Shin-chan. Me and the professor on summer vacation, the endless 7-day journey. The idea here is that if you imagine that you imagine the summer holidays that you might have had as a child, if you went to your own, if you vacationed in your own country like I did back in the day, right? You would go to places for a week, let's say. You would maybe stay in like a house rather than a hotel. That kind of thing. You might help your parents prepare special meals or go for long walks, or you would hang out with kids for just that week. You'd meet them on the first day. You'd become best friends for like 6 days, and then you'd leave and you'd promise to talk with each other for the rest of your life. And you never spoke to them ever again. It's trying to capture that feeling, but of a nostalgic countryside Japan that is often quite a lot of fodder for Ghibli movies. So if you've seen something like Only Yesterday or My Neighbor Totoro, for example, I think Totoro is probably a better example. It's that countryside thing where you go out there and there's cicadas, grasshoppers, those things. That buzz, that constant that you all...
Cicadas.
Is it cicadas? Oh, yeah, that thing.
We've pronounced it 3 different ways, 3 different times, so one of them's going to be right.
So we're covered.
It's that soundtrack throughout. It's that... and the whole point of the gameplay is that it's just really open form. Like, if you want to go and catch bugs, go catch bugs. If you want to catch fish. There is a story which involves this professor character, and the endless 7-day journey is a nod to the idea that it has, which is basically you only play 1 week, and over that week you have the summer vacation, but it's endless, and for various reasons that you find out during the game, it repeats itself. It begins to repeat itself, but the actual the actual core gameplay is just so chill. There's no pressure. There's no, there's like there's only so many actions you can take every single day, right? Like you run between different screens, different areas of the game, and an energy meter drops down a little bit and says, okay, well, you've done a little bit here. And then a timer goes on, like it goes from like during the day to the, early evening into night and all that sort of stuff, and different things happen in different places. So like Shenmue, for example, a bit like Shenmue, people will be in certain areas at certain times or certain days, and so you have to go to those locations and kind of do that stuff. So there's a nightclub, and it only weirdly there's a nightclub and it only opens in the evening properly. People are only really there then. And people want takeout food only at a certain time. So if you want to complete a weird little set of challenges, like, take this number of delivery orders, you can only do that in a certain time in a certain way. And so you get to understand the feel. And this is the thing I think you would like about this, Kris, the layout and the feel of what it is to be in the space of this small countryside village. Like you really get a sense of space there, of place and geography, which I find really fascinating. Like the first hour that you play it, you're like really lost, and you're really like trying to find your way around this little village, and like where is everything, and and by the end of the game, like the area like at the back of your hand, because if you think to yourself, I want to go and play the trading card game that's in the thing, I know I need to get from here to here, and the quickest way is to cut through the field. It's things like that where that isn't expressly ever said, but that's just, you figure it out because you're trying to be as efficient as you possibly can.
So describe to me what I'm looking at on the screen here. Is this like a top-down sort of thing? So
it's third person. You are playing as Shin-chan, so a little boy, and the visuals really are reminiscent of the My Summer Vacation series in that they're kind of like something like an Animal Crossing or Nintendo Mii's, like that level of visual detail, but not quite in that same style. There are fixed cameras, but in a 3D space, so it kind of feels a little bit like Resident Evil in that, like, there's a camera that's, you go from area to area. The space is 3D, but a lot of it has 2D elements. I think a lot of it is pre-rendered in some areas, and it gives it a really nostalgic feel to the whole thing. But yeah, like it's wonderful, and it was exactly what I needed at exactly the right time. It's so chill and peaceful and unthreatening and funny, like really funny in places. The writing of it is clearly very well put together. The situational humor is very, very good, very well written. Some of the translations leave a little bit to be desired. Like, you get the feeling that they did the localization and they went, that'll do. How many English-speaking people are going to play this? But it's nice in a sort of like, again, a kind of like Dandy Beano-esque humor of like, it's a bit childish, but it raises a smile. And that's really all it needs to do, because it is just... It's that same meditative quality that something like Stardew has, whereby you think, I'll just finish this up, and I'll just collect this one bug over here, and I'll pop down to the lake to make sure I can get that, and then I'll head back, and then I'll finish for the day, and I'll save, and I'll turn the game off. And then you do that another time, and another time, and another time, and you just keep going because you just love playing it. It's just so lovely. And then after about 14 or 15 hours, you open up, you finish the game, you get a new game plus, and you think to yourself, I might play this again. I might just play this again because it's so lovely.
We got a question.
Oh yeah,
and it's a question in a very timely manner.
Okay,
because this is the last show you're here before we go off to Airecon. Something that I'm very excited about. I was around Kris's the other day and I was going, right, we've got to take that to Airecon. We've got to take that to Airecon. Yeah, we're going to take that game to Airecon.
Why are you taking anything to get Airecon? Surely you go there, it's an excuse to buy lots of stuff and then sit
or borrow lots of stuff.
Because I've got tons of games that we need to review and look at and play, and I want to subject you all to.
Fair enough.
That's why. I actually had a nightmare the other day that I went to Airecon and I was there on my own because I got there early before all of you guys, which is something I'm intending to do anyway. And I forgot to bring all the games for the bring and buy, and I forgot to bring any games with me. And the level of anxiety and fear that caused was alarming.
I think what's alarming is that is, I mean, that's, it's a bad dream, a nightmare.
Oh, I felt like a nightmare, Kris.
A nightmare. A side note to all of this, I've bought a game carrying bag for this event.
Yes.
And I will be bringing
I've got to do this as well because I haven't got one of those. And it was really useful. Sam's got one and he brought it last year and it was so useful.
I've got a bunch of old board games and I am just going to get rid of them.
Or just hide them around the convention centre.
I'm going to squirrel them away. I'm going to go up to tables and I'm going to whisper in one of their ears. I'm going to go, do you want a copy of Scum and Villainy? Do you want a copy of it? I can give you a copy of Scum and Villainy. And then they'll go, who are you? And I'll say, I'm the Board Game Centre, and I'm here to give you a copy of Scum and Villainy from my massive bag.
But I am preparing for Airecon in my own way. Mm-hmm. In my own way, I'm doing my own thing, getting prepared, thinking about what I might want to buy. But Damien Faulkner got in touch with us on Twitter @StayingInPod.
Hello.
asking for tips for their first board game convention. So they're going with their wife and kids.
Where are they going, Sam?
They're going to Airecon.
They're going to
my
Airecon.
word.
Oh, excellent stuff. We'll have to high five them.
We'll have to say hello.
Yeah.
If they want to, obviously.
If they want to, yeah.
In terms of tips for visiting conventions, I feel like you've probably nailed on the first tip that I would encourage anyone to go to. If it's your first one, then I think you can pretty much, you could do no wrong by going to Airecon.
Yeah.
Because it's the friendliest, nicest convention that I've been to. And I think the one thing it's got over the conventions that I've been to in this country so far is that it's in the middle of Harrogate. And especially if you've got kids or if you've got family and they don't necessarily have the same levels of energy into board games that you do, then you're on the doorstep of one of the loveliest little towns in the north. So it's kind of really easy to go, right, let's take a break from all these board games now. Let's go to the Timothy Taylor pub. Let's go let's go to the local tap house.
Yeah, which is especially good for young families going to the Timothy Taylor pub, yeah.
Or Betty's Tea Rooms. Betty's
There
Tea
you go,
Rooms.
yeah.
Take the kids there.
But on that subject, what we learned when we first went to Airecon was book somewhere. If you want to eat, book somewhere.
Yeah.
So each of us have booked somewhere for breakfast and dinners and things. So we know, because Sam and I did about 3 laps of Harrogate one evening when we were there, because everywhere was pretty full. Because there's some really lovely eateries and stuff there, but obviously it's a big convention and everyone just pours into Harrogate. So we were lucky to kind of find a table for the 2 of us.
On the subject of eating, here's a little tip. Make sure you got some snacks throughout the day. Snacks and water. Conventions, I always end up with very chapped lips, and sometimes I get a little bit hangry if I haven't got any food or water or anything like that. Like really, really, really important, because you'll be on your feet all day. And if you're not on your feet, you're using your brain because you're playing a board game. So definitely worth taking a couple of snacks, bottle of water, because you do not want to buy anything from the convention because it will be either way too overpriced or rubbish, or both.
Oh, hang on. The food at Aircon's really good.
I was about to say, the food was incredible.
I've not been to Airecon, but every other convention I've ever been to, that has been the case. So we're talking more generally now about conference. I'm talking more generally about...
Okay, generally. Yeah. But they're going to Airecon for their first.
Well,
and with Airecon just around the corner. So when this episode comes out, Aircon's 10 days away. So there may still be tickets left to go there, either for the day or the weekend. And I very much encourage you to do so. But in talking like general advice, then I think when you first get there, it can be very overwhelming. Yeah. There's lots and lots of things going on. There's lots of things kind of screaming for your attention. There'll be lots of people running around knowing exactly what they're going in there and what they're doing. So my main bit of advice is just to take a walk around first. Take a walk around. Like, it's really easy to go there and just like look at all the shops and think about buying stuff and I don't really want to miss out on that. I really want to go and just take a walk around, get your bearings, and have a look and see what sort of catches your eye in terms of games that people are demonstrating and what generally people are playing out about, which is why, again, Airecon's so lovely, because how the convention hall is set up is you have these like pockets of people demonstrating things and then pockets of people selling stuff, and in between that you've got areas that people are playing games within. So to get from one to the other, like to get from where the bring and buy was last year into the main hall, you walk through tables of people just sitting there playing games, and that's like and that's really lovely. Yeah. Whereas in some convention centres they're very split off, and they're very much their own separate things.
Yeah, it's like a department store. But I think, as you say, Sam, like the best moments we had at Airecon were the ones where it was spontaneous. We were walking past, that game looks good. Yeah. We'll have a demo. Actually, let's sit and have a play, because you can game it. You can, before you go, look at the bring and buy sale catalogue online and be strategic. But personally, like, particularly for your first visit, having that kind of that idea of kind of botanizing around the kind of games tables is really quite lovely. Really, that kind of degree of spontaneity is king.
I think it sounds a bit cliche to say, but a day is a long time, and I think sometimes when I've been at convention centres and conventions, I want to do the thing. I want to do the things like straight away. I want to like. I won't do that because there's something else I've got to see that's more important. And, I won't sit down and play that game because there's something else I've got to do. And then half an hour later, I'm just wandering around with nothing, realizing I've not done anything for half an hour. And I feel like a day is a long period of time. And if someone's coming over and says, come and play this, come and join us, come and try this out, you have got time to play it. And unless you've actually got something booked, like, for example, this year, me and Pete, for the first time, are going to be stuck in a room not doing any of that business for 4 hours with people that we don't know playing an RPG. And part of me, when Pete floated this idea, part of me inside was like, but what if I miss out on all the, what if I miss out on all the games and all the... I'm there for 3 days. Yeah. Like giving up 4 hours to spend some time with, one of my best friends and
me.
Play an RPG is actually, a lovely experience. You've got time. Yeah, you've got time. There's time.
Even if it was a day, it's going to be a great experience, and you'll just come back next year. Like, I think the analysis paralysis extends into the actual idea of a convention where you'll just spend so long thinking, well, I'll come back later. I'll come back later to this, that actually you're just not going to actually do anything. You are going to miss out on stuff. You are.
Yeah, but I feel like if you want a bit of a leg up, then... again, speaking Airecon specifically here, and I'm only doing this because it is, quite close around the corner, but go and see Hachette because they're lovely, lovely people, and they've got games for all types. So they've got games for families, games for light sort of strategy play, and then they've got more abstract-y games as well. So they've got games to suit every sort of need, and they're really, really nice and inviting, and I'm happy for you to join them. Cosmos are there this year as well, and Cosmos are absolutely wonderful, and they've got tons of games which suits lots of different play styles and families. And
they're really good at demonstrating their games as well, Cosmos. I remember we were there at UKGE, and they were really good at like having a good amount of space and good amount of people who are actually showing stuff off, and that was good.
Any other convention tips other than actually on the floor, but general MISC advice? You think?
I'd say divide and conquer. Like, don't be afraid to split the group up. We've done that, and I think that literally happened, Sam, organically when you and I first arrived. We bumped into a friend of ours at Damski. You went off to the Bring and Buy sale. I went off and played Fort with 2 people I'd never met before. Perfect. And I wasn't thinking, oh my word, I need to get back to Sam. So it's quite nice because I hung out and touch base with you later. Like, oh yeah, well, I did this, and this, and this. Oh, where's that? Oh, you need to go up here, and do that.
Yeah.
Because a day is a long time with each other.
A day is a long time. Mm-hmm.
I'd say use your. I think the lap. Do a lap before you pick on anything, like we were saying. But also, pick your battles. Like, if you really, really want to play some big, dense 4-hour-long strategy game, like the brand new one that's coming out, and you really want to play it, like, pick your battles. If you really want to do that, go for it. If you're not 100% sure, if you're like, ask how long an average demo game takes. Like, because if they're like, oh, it's going to take 10, 15 minutes, so you can be like, oh, that's brilliant. But if you suddenly get trapped for 2 hours playing a game and you're just like, I'm not really into this, I would say just use a little bit of caution on that. It's the same thing when you go to like a video game convention. It's like, if you really want to go and sit down and play a Civilization game at a video game convention, that's great, but you're going to be there for hours doing that. Like, you're essentially saying no to a bunch of other stuff. And that's fine. Just know that you're going into it. Also, on the tables, quite often, there will be things of like, this is the number of players, this is the kind of thing that it is, the kind of genre that it is, this is roughly how long the games take. Those are really useful to see.
We need 2 players.
We need 2 players, like all that sort of stuff. Sometimes at some conventions I've seen like little balloons or little flags of like...
Yeah, I think it's like flags at Airecon.
So get to know that system as well. And as Sam touched upon, and Kris alluded to as well, like, everybody, the beautiful thing about being around strangers at that event is you immediately have something to talk about. Always. You know that every single person who is there is in some way interested in board games. It might simply be that their partner is into board games, like, and they're just, along for the ride, right? Like, but like, it could be that they are like, that is their jam, or like, oh, they're a designer who's like, scoping out the scene, or they've got a game there and they're trying something else out, like, or maybe they're just a big fan of the thing, right? Like, whatever it is, you immediately have the icebreaker. Like, they're into board games. Like, and so introduce yourself, say hi, all that sort of stuff. Be the personable person in those situations, because honestly, like, we're all slightly, reserved, slightly dorky folks. And like, if you could be the person who goes, hey, yeah, do you want to do this thing? Everybody wants to. Everybody's just a bit too British and uptight to turn around and go, oh, yeah, no, actually, I would quite like to do that.
And last thing I would say is, don't forget those lovely indie publishers.
Yes.
There'll be people there who've got a game that's a prototype, and it may look extremely abstract in its current state, bits and pieces made out of cardboard and sugar paper, but they tend to be some of the most passionate people. Yeah. And I would really highly recommend, not just kind of like, because it doesn't look like a kind of a AAA title that's, you've seen everywhere. You're seeing a game in its infancy here. Like, take a punt on it. It's a lovely thing to say you've experienced.
Otherwise, when are you otherwise going to get the chance to play this tiny little thing that's only ever going to sell 150 copies on Kickstarter? Like, do it.
The third thing that was on the docket for this podcast recording, I believe, was a game either by Prospero Hall or by Helvetique, and I'm going to tick that off our list now.
Go on.
By talking about a brand new game, that we got sent.
Okay.
From Coiled Spring.
All right.
Called Mada.
Ooh.
Have any of you heard or seen Mada?
No.
Well, it's from Helvetique, who make some of the
amazing,
incredible games. Compromat, Bandido,
yep,
Art Robbery, Kariba. Yep. Any more? What's that mushroom one that I got you, Kris?
Kinoko. Yeah, they're really good. They're great stocking filler games, I find, with Helvetique, and that's not to render them a disservice. It's one of those great TARDIS-like games where you open the lid, it almost feels like it's exploding out the box.
Yeah. K3, Just Wild, we spoke about on the last show, Go Town. Mada, though, is a really interesting game that they sent us. It's one of their newest ones. I think it only came out last year, the end of last year. And it's got this exceptionally colourful design to it. It's almost like a passion fruit design, this lovely deep yellow box with this purpley writing, and then this playful little lemur on the cover. Again, it's a really tiny little box, and I think that's the thing I love about the Helvetique games in general is the size of the box. And every time I see a game, I always tend to pick one up and give it to Kris or buy it for someone I know, because they're relatively cheap, around about the cost of like £10, maybe £15 at the max. But as Kris was saying, they kind of like explode out the box in terms of what they offer. And usually they're only like a deck of cards, and Mada is just a deck of cards, and the setup is shuffle all the cards, deal 3 to each player. So getting it out of the box and getting it in front of people is incredibly simple. Designed by Sophia Wagner, and again the art style by Clara San Milan is incredible. The aim of the game is to have the most prickly pears by the end of the game. So each card either has a scorpion on it, 1 or 2 lemurs, or some prickly pears. And if the card has a prickly pear on it, it'll also have a number on it. And the lower the number, the less prickly pears are on that card. Are you following me so far? Yeah. So a number 1 card has 1 prickly pear, but a 13 card, which is the highest card in the deck, I think has 6 prickly pears on it. And on your go, you do one of 3 things. So you can play a card from your hand in front of you. and you can only play cards in front of you if they're equal to or higher than the previous number that you've already played. The second thing you can do, if you want to, is draw a card. So you can only draw a card if you've got less than 3 cards in your hand, and you can only draw a card as an action on your turn, and you can't do anything else. And the third thing that you can do on your turn is you can decide to go wild, take a risk, I think it's called, and you have to shout out, "I'm taking a risk."
Do you have to shout it out?
All eyes come. It says in the rule book you got to shout it out, and I'm a stickler for rules.
Well,
and you turn over the top card from the deck, and then put it down onto your pile. And again, it has to follow the same rules, so it has to match or be higher than the previous card that you played. If it isn't, then you lose. All your cards get discarded, and everyone else takes a top card off their pile and squirrels it away for later, and that's the card that they score from.
Interesting.
And then the game basically begins again. So I've played it a few times now, a couple of different player counts, and it is exceedingly fun. And I spent most of the couple of times playing it trying to work out like exactly where that fun was coming from, and also exactly what I was trying to do on each turn. And it was only when I started playing it just me and my wife as a 2-player game that it really started, like I really started to understand how this game was coming together and actually what it is that makes it so appealing. And the essence of the game is basically trying to stay in the game for as long as possible. Do you know what I mean? So it's if you've always got a card to play from your hand, or you always have the opportunity to pick a card up from the deck, that equals time that you're spending active in the game. The minute you start basically blocking off opportunities and hampering yourself to progress in the game, that's when you're going to be starting to lose. So the minute you're putting down things like 10s, 11s, 12s, you're stopping yourself from basically trying to progress in the game. You're indicating to the rest of the table, I'm sort of, a target in front of Pete's axe here.
Yeah, like, sure.
You're the nipple.
I'm getting to the end of where I can compete in the game. So pretty soon I'm going to have to take that risk. So then you see that and you go, right, if they're starting to get to the end of if they're starting to get to the end of like their lifespan of this round, I'm going to have to start putting down cards that are worth more prickly pears, because I don't want to, I've just been bobbing around at the 3s and the 4s and keeping myself in the game and like, oh yeah, just like really clever hand management just to keep myself around about the bottom. So I've got lots of room, lots of headroom to expand my game out into. But suddenly it looks like the game's about to end and I've only got 1 prickly pear. Right, I need to start putting down more. So when the game ends, I get myself a bigger reward at the end of it.
But I like those games. It's a bit like when we play Parade, Sam, where you're like, okay, well, I just do this.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just do that. What? Oh, hang on, no. Oh, hang on, no. I can't just do that, because if I do that... Oh, and I like those games where it takes a few rounds to kind of discover the hidden game within it. That's when it becomes really, really interesting. That's when you kind of get to like... almost like 6 nimped kind of areas where like, yeah, I can play a card, yes. I can draw a card. I understand how that works, but actually those nuances that go with that, actually, they may not necessarily become as obvious. But when you discover them, it's such a wonderful sensation. And then suddenly it's like you've unlocked something within the game.
This is one of those perfect games for when me and Pete are absolutely burnt out playing the weird space RPG he signed us up for. Like, this is all I'm going to have energy to do, but I know I'm going to have a blast playing it.
Weird space RPG. Oh, just a game with literally decades of beloved fandom. Just weird. Who's ever heard of Traveller?
Hey ho, it's Lockwood Co.
Everybody say hello.
I've not buried the lead. I've watched all of this, all 8 episodes of this on Netflix recently.
What is it?
It is a supernatural detective thriller on Netflix. And there are a few things that piqued my interest. One, it was that description of it as, I suppose, as a genre. Second, it was because it's got Joe Cornish's name attached to this.
Oh.
Joe Cornish of the Adam and Joe Show, of Attack the Block, co-writer of what, Tintin and Ant-Man?
Yeah, didn't he also do that King Arthur film as well?
Yes, he did, which didn't do that well apparently, although I've not watched it, so I can be wrong. But there's something, what's great about some of Joe Cornish's work in particular is the way in which dialogue for young adults or children is not written in a manner that feels like it's been written by an adult putting words into the mouth of children and young adults, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And there's a wonderful pairing here with this IP, which is Lockwood Co, which is a series of books, like young adult books from Jonathan Stroud, which I've not read, I must admit. And this is set in an alternate London where an event occurred like decades ago called The Problem. And the result of that is that there are ghosts everywhere. And if any of the ghosts touch you, that's it, you dead. And then you become a ghost. However, the trade-off with that is that there are certain people out there who develop a sensitivity to ghosts. They can detect them, they can sense them, and they can fight back against them using materials that apparently work really well against ghosts. So iron, silver, for example, these precious metals. But here's the interesting wrinkle, that the only people that can sense ghosts are children, and certain children.
Okay.
I can believe that.
So the agencies are created to take down these ghosts, but their agents are made up of kids. When you get to a certain age, like your 20s, you start to lose that ability to be sensitive. Right. So what you've got is like government organisations that are, the managerial team is adults, but they're basically sending kids into haunted houses to dispatch these ghosts.
Okay.
And it's really interesting, like that dynamic, that generational dynamic is really, really interesting. And Lockwood Co follows this teenager, Lucy Carlyle, who's kind of left home. She's come from a family that are just kind of really kind of toxic and quite hostile. And there's an awful event happens when she's doing her training up north. She's a sensitive who can hear the spectres, hear ghosts. So she's very sensitive to that, very powerful. And she travels down to London and basically finds a job with this agency, which is made up of, in total, 3 people, including her, called Lockwood Co, which is headed up by Anthony Lockwood, who's this quite roguish chap who has kind of got a lot of bravado, but there is this kind of vulnerability to them. And assisted also by George, who is their kind of bookworm, their researcher. And there's something really quite cool and steampunky about it. Like all agents walk around with swords, like rapiers, like they're fencing. And it's quite cool. Like each week, there's a haunted case, there's a haunted house here, and it's a mystery. You go in, you're thinking, okay, we need to find the source and work out what happened with this ghost and dispatch them. But it's just basically, it's like a load of adults just standing outside haunted buildings and just going, can you go in and sort that for us, please?
That's great.
Pushing the kids inside. It's like Victorian Britain.
It is, basically. Can you go and clean that chimney? And because all these because this agency's off the book, it's in debt and it needs to find work when it can, really. But there's this overarching mystery that I really quite like, I'm interested in, about why the problem occurred. And there's this kind of sense of a kind of a cover-up. And it is, we've seen this kind of tons and tons of times before. But I really like this quite dynamic. It's energetic, it's bingeable, definitely bingeable. And I'd happily see more of it, genuinely. Yeah, it's got, there's something quite, the soundtrack's quite punky. Cornish really wanted to make it feel quite punky in terms of its soundtrack. But it has that kind of that really interesting kind of quite refreshing kind of dialogue for young adults that I find really, really interesting. And it's a world that I became quite invested in over its 8 episodes, really. So yeah, I do recommend giving it a shot.
So as a series of, you said it was for young adults or older children, the books?
Yeah, so they're a collection of stories. This first series is based on the first 2 in the series. So there's 5 books in total.
So are they? Is the TV series appropriate? It's not really the right word, but like, is the TV series who is the TV series aimed at? Is it aimed at that same audience of like young adults? Which I've got to be honest, whenever there's a deal on Audible that says come and look at young adult fiction, I'm like, nah, I'm all right. Like, but like, is it for adults, the TV series, or is it for like basically old kids?
I would say my mum couldn't watch it, that's for sure. But my mum gets spooked very easily.
Oh, right.
But, like,
okay.
I think like it's for adults. I think young adults can watch it, but it's like, I think it is like the very, very really creepiest episodes of Doctor Who where you're thinking, I'm not sure this is appropriate.
Okay.
That's cool.
So it's for yeah. I think as a young adult, I'd hoover it up.
Right.
It might have given me, I don't know, maybe some bad dreams, a la Sam's about Airecon.
Yeah,
but
happens to us all.
But I think you can watch it as an adult. I'm not watching it in a kind of nostalgic sense of like, I remember watching Goosebumps when I was a kid. No, this feels grown up, and that's what's quite interesting. It's a grown up series, but it's led by kids, young adults, and the performances are great. I think Ruby Stokes is fantastic as Lucy Carlisle. Same with Cameron Chapman as Anthony Lockwood, and Al Haji Hashmati as George is just so endearing. And you think it's going to go down that there's kind of stereotypical kind of directions. You're assuming there's going to be some kind of love triangle. You're assuming that the geeky bookworm is the one that's just going to be the one that just stays behind in the base and is the one that's feeding out all the information. Yeah. You assume that the dashing hero is going to be the one that saves the day all the time, and it just isn't that.
The way that a lot of the components of what you've discussed here sound a little bit like Stranger Things. Like,
I prefer this to Stranger Things.
You prefer it to Stranger Things?
Yeah, because the kids are older, and I don't know, the stakes feel a little bit higher. It doesn't outstay its welcome. Like as Dan said before, the finale to the last series of Stranger Things, the last episode was 2 hours long. This is like 37 to like 40 minutes or so because it's Netflix. You can specify the time you want, really. And it's 8 episodes. Boom, 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 done. And and it gave me everything I needed. It didn't. Yes, there is a sense of there's more of a story to tell, but equally also I didn't feel like it was meeting stuff out to agonise me. I quite liked that sense of a mystery a week, but by in that same token, immersing yourself in a world that is coming to terms with this, where you've got people like, they call them relic men, who deal in like supernatural artifacts that have spirits connected to them. So they just deal in the black market there. So these kind of subcultures you become exposed to through these characters as they're solving mysteries, really, and how they're coming up against the larger institutions and this potential of a kind of a mystery that's attached to where the problem came from. But it goes at quite a nice pace, and the dialogue's quite snappy, quite funny in places, quite wry in terms of its humour, and it landed with me quite a nice way, actually.
So, what are we going to talk about next time? Should we get that boxed off now?
Coming up in Staying In.
Coming up next time on Staying In.
Next time, what are we going to talk about?
Dan's birthday, I imagine, how his birthday was.
Any more nightmares that I've had?
Well, there will be some nightmares because I'll be talking about Call of Cthulhu again.
Oh yeah, it's been a month already, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, yeah. So I'll be doing that.
I feel like this outro is meant to be, it's kind of morphed, evolved into, wanting to keep people sticking around to the end. But I feel like, we might be keeping people sticking around to the end, but we're putting people off listening to the next.
That's true.
Yeah, what's the opposite of hooked?
Sinkered. I would say that, you can also look forward to me and Sam and how we got on. No, the next one we won't have talked about that.
The next one will be coming out after we've come back from Airecon, but we're recording it before we go to Airecon. So the one where we talk about what happened at Airecon will be the 1st of April.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Time. What is it? We don't know. I will be talking about, if you want, we can talk about my rice cooker. We can talk about my air fryer.
Oh, yes, please.
We can talk about all the other utensils in my kitchen that I've realised are the best. We haven't talked about Long Johns on the podcast. Not enough, anyway. And I feel like I'm going to at some point talk about Long Johns at quite considerable length and how they've basically transformed my life. Okay.
So you can vote now for which one of Pete's things you want us to talk about on the show. You can get your votes in at Staying In Pod on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Remember, it's hashtag Long Johns, hashtag rice cooker, or hashtag air fryer for which one you really want to hear about.
I think it's going to be down to the wire.
It will be, won't it?
You can send us an email as well, stayinginpod@gmail.com. Remember to include in the subject line, I voted.
Or who cares?
Yeah. Also, if you want to find out what we talked about early, you can come and meet us at Airecon. And we'll tell you what we talked about in the episode. And or we could just have a normal conversation like normal people at Airecon, which would be quite fun as well. So I imagine one of us will be wearing a Staying In t-shirt.
Yeah, we'll rotate the shirts as usual, so we don't look completely awkward all wearing Staying In t-shirts.
We'll have photos from the show floor.
Yeah, and if Damien, if you're about and you want to say hello, love to,
yes. Damien.
Because we are always carrying stickers. They're Staying In stickers. They're not just, random stickers like from the Beano. But we'll have stickers. So if you see us and you say hello, we'll give you a lovely sticker. There you go.
You don't even have to stick around for the conversation. You could just ask for a sticker. Can I have a sticker? Yes. Goodbye. Excellent.
If you're travelling to Airecon just to see us, then of course there's Spotify playlists that you can listen to en route. Which Kris has put together, details of which are in the show notes. And I think that's it. Oh no! Curation pages on Steam and Board Game Geek. Again, if you go into Airecon and if you're looking for an idea of, this is a massive library, what should I be playing? Then on Board Game Geek, you can see a list of every single board game that we've ever spoken about. And if we're speaking about it on the podcast, that means it's probably pretty good. The same with the ones on Steam. There's a, I don't know I think it finishes on the 27th. So not relevant for when you're listening to this, but there is a mystery sale on at the moment on Steam. Which has got some great mystery games in it, like Curse of the Obra Dinn, Curse of the Golden Idol, Chinatown Mysteries.
So the best thing to do in that situation is, if you are actually following the Steam Curator page, on your front page on Steam, if there's a sale on, I believe Steam will surface recommendations from your Steam curators that you follow. Yes. So if you ever think, I'd be interested in that, but not at full price, then you can follow us on Steam, on the Steam Curator thing, and then those recommendations will come up in your recommendations as well.
Right. That's about it, I think. Did someone say all right then?
All right then.
Okay, there we go.